Morning. How are we feeling? We a little tired today? I don't know about, I can't stop yawning. I knew it was coming, and I just can't stop yawning. Well, I do want to take just a second and say, for all the song leaders who will text me and ask, hey, what's the lesson about Sunday? And then pick songs based on it. It is so helpful in guiding our thoughts and leading our worship. It's so wonderful. And Mark, as always, did an amazing job with those songs. So I hope that you internalize some of the words of those songs, because we're going to be talking about that this morning. Okay, over the year, our theme is building godly families. And we talked about the first union in creation, which was the individual man and God. No matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what your relationship status is, you need to have an individual relationship with the Lord. But then we started shifting to the second union that was in creation, which is between the man and the woman. If we want to build godly families, well, God is the one who built marriage, and so we need to have godly marriages. And to do that, last week we started talking about the Song of Solomon, or the Song of Songs. And there's just so many wonderful principles about courting, about romantic interest, about marriage, about marital intimacy that are all inside this song. And the approach that I take in this song is that Solomon is glorifying the ideal romantic and sexual love between a husband and a wife. And it's not a narrative, it's not historical narrative, so we don't get the story, all the details from beginning to end. We see sort of snapshots, sort of like Polaroids in a photo album, where you get these snapshots and you can see the relationship grow over time. And please, as we do this, please remember that Song of Solomon or Song of Songs in your translation might have it broken up differently about who is doing the speaking. And it's really important for us to remember there's no Hebrew markers in the original Hebrew of who is speaking. So we have to rely heavily on the context. So I'm going to present it the way that I think it is. You study it for yourself and come to your own conclusions. Okay. Last week, we noticed 3 principles about godly romantic interest. But now, as we get a little bit further into Song of Songs, I want to notice 3 warnings for godly courting or godly dating. I'm going to use those interchangeably. I know the definitions aren't actually the same, but that's kind of how we use it today. 3 warnings for godly courting or godly dating this morning. So go over to Song of Solomon, chapter 1, please. Song of Solomon 1, Song of Songs 1. And last week, I really am excited about this. Last week, we saw 2 portraits of who the Shulamite woman sees the king to be, what he looks like to her. She glorifies his character and his reputation and just longs to be with him. And we saw last week where the Shulamite woman experiences some insecurity because her brothers forced her to go out and work in the fields, and so she had this deep, dark tan that for the time period was less than ideal as far as physical appearance goes. What I'm really excited about, where we're going to start this morning, is we get to see how the man sees her. Where she feels some insecurity about her deep, dark tan, now we get to see how the man feels about her. And spoiler alert, he doesn't think she looks bad at all. So let's get into this. Look at verses 9 through 11 with me, please. Verses 9 through 11. This is the man speaking. He says, I compare you, my darling, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariots. Your cheeks are beautiful with jewelry, your neck with its necklace. And then verse 11, I think the daughters of Jerusalem say, we will make gold jewelry for you, accented with silver. So this is right after the section where the Shulamite woman has just expressed her insecurity about her deep, dark tan that she has compared to the other daughters of Jerusalem. And here the man comes right out and he says, you are absolutely jaw-dropping. He says, I compare you to a mare or to a filly among Pharaoh's chariots. I don't know, have you ever told a girl that you're interested in men, you look like a horse? I don't know, you could try it. Some horses are beautiful, they really are when they're taken care of. But what's wonderful about the imagery here is from the evidence that we have, Pharaoh's chariots were never drawn by mares or by fillies. They were always drawn by pairs of stallions. So what the man is saying is, you imagine Pharaoh's chariots that have pairs of stallions and then the choice mare or the prized filly walks by. Those horses are going to go nuts, right? So what Solomon is doing here, he's telling her, you are making all of the boys go crazy because of how absolutely beautiful you are. And remember, this is right after the section she talks about how insecure that she is because of her deep dark tan. He doesn't feel that way at all. You drive all the boys wild. He's flirting with her. He really is. And this is also the first time he uses the phrase, my darling. Your translation might say my love or my dearest. And he's going to use that 9 times throughout the song. That's going to be one of his special titles for her. It's a term of endearment and companionship that he only gives to her, my darling companion. And in verse 10, it's kind of unclear here in verse 10. It says, your cheeks are beautiful with jewelry, your neck with its necklace. Does she already have jewelry on? Is he saying she would look beautiful with jewelry on? Because in verse 11, it seems like the daughters of Jerusalem say, we'll make gold jewelry for you, accented with silver. So maybe she doesn't have it, or she does. Either way, he's saying, it's not the accessories that make you beautiful. It's not the jewelry. It's not the ornaments that make you beautiful. It's you. And what's amazing, too, with this whole comparison of Pharaoh's chariots, the prized mare would a lot of times have special jewelry on to identify her as the prized mare, the prized filly. So it's almost like Solomon is coming right out and saying, this woman is my prized mare. She's my prized filly. And it seems like the other girls get the message that he's being very public about, this is the one that I'm choosing. Because in verse 11, okay, we'll make gold jewelry for you, accented with silver. And where before we see that they're interested in Solomon, they're attracted to him because of his appearance and because of his character, well, now they see the value of the Shulamite woman because of how Solomon treats her. I don't think that should be the case. You want people to treat people with dignity and respect because of who they are. But unfortunately, we see this happen, don't we? Sometimes you have to see how somebody else values somebody, for then us to see the value in them. It shouldn't happen that way, but it does that way. And Solomon's love for her, the way that he treats her, the way that he values her, sends a clear and public message to all the daughters of Jerusalem. So it seems like, okay, now we're on board because maybe we don't have a chance anymore. So all right, we'll make ornaments of jewelry for you. We'll help you along the way. When a man treats his woman well and treats her well in public especially, it seems like these girls get the picture. This is now Solomon's prized woman. They value her beauty and her value. And so with that, zooming out from the specifics here, one of the first warnings that I want to bring out this morning about godly courting or about godly dating is to beware of secretive or non-committal relationships. Beware of secretive or non-committal relationships. If someone is serious about building a life with you, at some point, they will publicly identify with you. Now, I'm not saying it right at the very beginning, or that you have to go around and say, hey, I'm in a relationship to every person that you start with. She's mine. You don't have to do any of that. But at some point, there's a level of respect and dignity that's given in godly dating or godly courting that says, this is something serious. This is something that I'm not ashamed that if everybody sees this and knows that I'm interested in this other person. Have you ever heard of the word situationship? Anybody ever heard that? Okay, got some nod. That was new for me, but I hope that nobody's in one right now, but it's where someone wants to keep it private, or maybe they never really publicly clarify. It's where you're left wondering, so what are we? And at some point, that's got to go away, right? At some point, especially in godly courting or godly dating, it needs to be identified. The whole situationship idea can open the door for toxic or even abusive types of things, where maybe with certain people, I'm glad to publicly identify with you, but with other people, I'm keeping it on the down low, a little secretive, a little non-committal. Well, a relationship that's heading toward marriage can handle public recognition. It can handle the appropriate levels of community involvement. So let's keep reading here, because let's see how the Shulamite feels about sort of being called the prized mare or being identified with by Solomon. And let's see how she feels about her man. Look with me verses 12 through 14. The Shulamite woman says, while the king is on his couch, my perfume releases its fragrance. The one I love is a sachet of myrrh to me, spending the night between my breasts. The one I love is a cluster of henna blossoms to me in the vineyards of En-Gedi. Now here in these verses, it's unclear whether they're together or whether they're apart, because there in verse 12, the king may be on his couch. Your translation may say on his bed in his bedroom, and she might be away from him because they're not married at this point. Or others have suggested that the king is at his table and she's a guest at this banquet. We're definitely going to see a banquet a little bit later on. But either way, the focus in this section is how she views her man, how she feels about the man. She says, her nard or her perfume gives forth its fragrance. And specifically, that's a really rare and expensive ointment that she is using to continually attract the king. She's trying to attract him. But then in verses 13, 14, she talks about how she thinks of him. He's the beloved. He's a sachet of myrrh that spends the night between her breasts. He's a sweet smell to her. We talked about it last week, that his character, his name, his reputation was a sweet-smelling aroma to her. But it's not just when they're together either. It's almost like she's saying, even when I go to bed at night, I'm still thinking about him and how sweet of a smell that his character, who he is to me. All the time, I'm constantly thinking about him and smelling that fragrant aroma. And where she says between her breasts, I think there's some clear attraction that we're talking about, some physical marital attraction that she wants, that we saw last week, earlier in chapter 1. And she also says, verse 14 here, he's a cluster of henna blossoms to me in the vineyards of En-gedi. That specific place that's mentioned is a famous oasis in the desert. And so she's saying, he is to me this oasis in the middle of a desert that's lush with well-watered flowers and all these things, smelling sweet, but just pleasant to be around. We're going to see that a little bit later. Everything else might be a desert, but he is an oasis to her. So based on her reaction to this whole prized mare thing, again, I don't know if you want to call someone you're interested in a horse, but the way that she responds to that, it seems like she loves being claimed by him. She loves that he looks at her in this way. She loves that, and she longs for him. She has this strong attraction to him, and he's an oasis for her. So for those who are pursuing romantic relationships, and particularly just the way that this is broken up for men, I think at some point it's really important to clarify what we are at some point. It respects the dignities of both parties, and when it goes from simply romantic interest to, hey, we're in a relationship now. We're going steady. You know, you're my prized mare. Maybe don't say that. But at some point, you got to publicly identify with this person. And from what we see the Shulamite have here, it gives clarity. It gives a sense of security, and she knows where she stands with him, and he's not ashamed to be identified with her. So Solomon claims the Shulamite woman as his darling companion, as his love, as his dearest, and all the daughters of Jerusalem could see that. Everybody knew that at this point, and she loved him for it. So again, in godly dating, godly courting, really beware of the secretive or non-committal relationships, because that's probably a red flag that it's not wise to pursue this person. Okay, now let's move on to the next snapshot, because this next snapshot, we're going to see some time has gone by, and the couple's together, they're openly expressing their feelings, and they're clearly more comfortable with one another. Look with me, verse 15, chapter 1, verse 15. We're going to read down to chapter 2 and verse 3. So 1:15 to 2, verse 3. The man says, "How beautiful you are, my darling, how very beautiful. Your eyes are doves." The Shulamite woman responds, "How handsome you are, my love, how delightful. Our bed is verdant. The beams of our house are cedars, and our rafters are cypresses. I am a wildflower of Sharon, a lily of the valleys." The man here says, "Like a lily among thorns, so is my darling among the young women." The Shulamite responds, "Like an apricot tree among the trees of the forest, so is my love among the young men. I delight to sit in his shade, and his fruit is sweet to my taste." Now, I love this section. It's very poetic, it's very sweet, and it's really powerful. They've clearly at this point become much closer to each other because they're talking to each other and expressing their feelings in a way that you don't just do right at the beginning. And so they are expressing their feelings. Verse 15, for a man to be tender and to speak sweetly to his woman like this is a wonderful, wonderful thing. He says, "How beautiful you are, my darling. How very beautiful. Your eyes are doves." I love that because there's nothing in what he says that's dirty. There's nothing that's demeaning or degrading. There's nothing crude in what he says. He's praising her very sweetly, very tenderly, very affectionately. And so one little side note, as I'm preparing for these things, I'm like, when's the last time I talked to my wife like that? So maybe before the day ends, get some of those out. Maybe not the horse, but maybe this. So it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. In verse 16, the woman responds to this almost word for word in Hebrew. She actually says, "You're beautiful," but it's in the masculine form. So a lot of our translations say handsome, which is correct. "You're beautiful, you're handsome." And she adds that he's pleasant. Your translation might say delightful or lovely to be around even. And it seems like maybe the woman continues the imagery that the man started. Earlier, he said, your eyes are doves. And later throughout the song, we're going to see this is one of his favorite titles or maybe pet names that he has for her. He'll call her my dove over and over and over again. It's really sweet. It's really tender here. And so maybe she picks up the imagery of doves, and she says, our bed is verdant. You have this lush green nature flourishing from tree to tree. It's almost like two birds that are chasing each other and flitting from tree to tree. They're very lovey-dovey at this point. I couldn't think of a better way to say it. They're lovey-dovey at this point, flitting from tree to tree, following each other, chasing each other around. There's a lot of smiles on people's faces. So I appreciate that. I think a lot of us have felt that. We've been there. It's a wonderful, beautiful thing here. And so in Song 2, verse 1, this is another thing that really sticks out to me about this section. They're very lovey-dovey. They're very comfortable expressing their feelings for one another. He's saying, you're beautiful. She's saying, you're beautiful. It's almost like, no, you hang up. No, you hang up. It's a wonderful thing. And while they're much closer to each other, the insecurities that the Shulamite woman has have not completely gone away yet. So look at chapter 2, verse 1 again. In chapter 2, verse 1, she says, I am a wildflower of Sharon. Yours might say, I'm a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys. Now, what's fascinating about this is she calls herself a rose or a wildflower of the Sharon. That's a real place. Now, when we think of a rose, we are not thinking of the same flower that they're thinking of. It was probably something more like a tulip. And what's really significant about that is, in the Sharon, this is a heavily vegetated area that had all kinds of flowers in it, all kinds of plants. So what she's not doing is saying, I'm a rose, I'm a wildflower compared to all these other women. She's not saying that. She's actually saying, you know, I'm just a pretty humble flower, pretty common wildflower among a whole bunch of other flowers. She's actually sort of, I don't want to say looking down on herself, but she's saying, I'm nothing special. I'm just a flower in a field full of flowers. And where she says a lily of the valleys, it's the exact same thing. I'm just one of these lilies, whole bunch of other lilies in a field. So her insecurities about her deeply dark tan, they've not gone away. She's still insecure about herself compared to the other women. And just a note here too on this passage, I mentioned briefly last week that many people view Song of Songs to be primarily about Christ in the church. And there are definitely some analogies that we're going to continue to make, but specifically, who is the rose of Sharon or the wildflower of Sharon? Who is the lily of the valleys? It's the woman. It's not the man. And in the relationship between Christ and the church, Christ would be the man and the church would be the woman. So we've got a couple of songs that we might sing from time to time that actually don't follow the actual imagery from Song of Songs. Anyway, just something to think about, a little sidebar. So back to the story. She has just not demeaned herself, but she's saying, I'm just a flower among a bunch of other flowers. I'm nothing special. And I love what the man says in response. If you want to write one down, men, here's a great one to write down. In verse 2, he says, like a lily among thorns, so is my darling among the young women. Write that one down. It's a good one. He immediately takes the imagery that she uses, I'm just a flower among a bunch of other flowers. He says, no, you got it all wrong. You are the only flower in a field full of thorns. You make all the other women look bad, and you're the only one that catches my eye. That's pretty good. Got to write that one down. I love it. I love that he does that. And he uses that same term again, that special term of endearment, my darling, my love, my dearest, that he only uses for her. That is such a wonderful, tender, beautiful thing for a man to say to his woman. And it gives her security, it gives her safety, and it gives her clarity. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Down in verse 3, she essentially returns the compliment to him and expresses how he makes her feel. And he makes her feel safe. He makes her feel secure. He makes her feel valued and provided for. Because in verse 3, she loves to sit under his shade and enjoy the fruit from his tree. It's interesting because he's not a tall, foreboding tree in a wild forest. The view is a wild forest, the specific word here. So you've got this wild forest with all these tall, intimidating trees, and things are uncultivated. And he is like an apple tree or like an apricot tree that provides shade for her, that provides fruit for her in this wild forest. So he provides safety and security, and specifically where it says that he provides shade for her, I think that's significant. You remember what her insecurity was about? She had to work in the vineyards out in the sun all day, and that deeply tanned her. Well, this man provides shade from the sun. So shade from the insecurity, because he doesn't see that about her. He sees someone who's beautiful and that he loves. And this is wonderful. This is wonderful, wonderful pictures. And the fruit that sustains her here, I think specifically in the context, are the words and the actions that he does towards her that make her feel secure, that make her feel safe. He speaks to her in a way that builds her up and doesn't tear her down. He speaks to her in a way that builds confidence and doesn't demean her in any way. And in that safety, in that security, they're free to be themselves. And they're free to talk with each other and express their emotions freely. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And so with that, another principle, another warning about godly courting or godly dating is to beware those who would diminish you. Beware those who would diminish you. Watch how somebody talks to you, or watch how somebody talks about you. Song of Songs definitely shows us flirtation. It definitely shows us giving compliments. But nothing that he said here is flirtation that cheapens her. Nothing that she says cheapens him. Nothing degrades them down to just pieces of meat, but it's about their character, about their person, and their appearance. But it doesn't demean them at all. Someone who is interested in a godly relationship will speak words that build up and not tear down. And I think that's so important. Words that build up and not tear down. And on that, if you feel more insecurity, if you feel worse when you're around them, that's a red flag. Because the Shulamite feels secure. She said, he's an oasis to me. She said, he is like this tree that provides fruit and shade. So if you feel worse when you're around them, do not pass go. Do not collect $200. That is danger. Red flag. This person that you are interested in, you should be able to say, they're an oasis to me. From the desert of everything else, they're an oasis to me. From the wild forest everywhere else, they are protective shade for me. And it's a wonderful, beautiful thing. Okay, a godly relationship that is building toward marriage should cultivate confidence and not insecurity. So beware of those who diminish you or make you feel diminished by their presence. Okay, let's look at one more snapshot this morning, one more, and we're going to see their relationship progress even further. So read with me chapter 2, verses 4 through 7, just verses 4 through 7. The Shulamite woman here is speaking, and she says, he brought me to the banquet hall, and he looked on me with love. Your translation might say, his banner over me was love. Sustain me with raisins, refresh me with apricots, for I am sick with love. I am lovesick. May his left hand be under my head, and his right arm embrace me. Young women of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and the wild does of the field, do not stir up or awaken love until the appropriate time. So in this snapshot, we just see the Shulamite woman speaking here, and she's very much in love. She's very much in love. And by the way, as we get to the next snapshots, we're going to see they progress toward marriage pretty quickly. But in verse 4, it says the man brought her to his banqueting hall or banquet hall. And whether they're literally in a banquet hall or if this is a dream sequence or figurative language, it's not certain. But the imagery is definitely the same. The king brings her to this ornate banquet hall with all this delicious and nourishing food that's there. And the second half of verse 4 says, his banner over me was love, or he looked on me with love. The word for banner there is used in the Old Testament a lot. Usually it's about military banners or military flags, or about tribal banners or tribal flags. So the tribe of Reuben, here's your flag. The tribe of Simeon, here's your flag. And it would tell people where to go. It would say, this is who this is. So if somebody had the banner of Reuben, for example, these are the Reubenites. They belong to the family of Reuben. And so what the man's love has done for the woman is to show other people, this is who I belong to. His banner over her was love. The way that Solomon talked to her, the way that he treated her, the way that he valued her was a banner over her that showed everybody. I don't want to say what I was about to say. I'm going to say it anyway. Property of, I'm not going to say that because it's awful. But this is who I belong to. And everybody could see it very publicly. Everybody could see it. And what's amazing about this is she's in this banquet hall with this ornate everything and all this wonderful food that would nourish the body. And she's weak at the knees. She's lovesick. She's like, refresh me with apricots. Give me the nutrition I need. I'm lovesick. I'm sick with love. And The romantic feelings of love are so powerful. Infatuation specifically, a lot of us in the room have felt that, right? Where we did the, no, you hang up. No, you hang up. No, you. We already saw that. And we've felt that. They can be so powerful. She's lovesick. She's sick with love. All this food that would nourish her, and she's weak. Love is so, so powerful. And what she wants is verse 6. She wants physical, marital intimacy with him. May his left hand be under my head and his right arm embrace me. What's fascinating about that, there's love poetry from the time period where almost every time this is talking about marital sexual intimacy. That's what she's longing for and she wants with him. But the daughters of Jerusalem are there and she has a warning for them. And I love this in verse 7. Young women of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and the wild does of the field, do not stir up or awaken love until the appropriate time. So she's acknowledging, I am so in love with this man. I'm so in love with him that I'm weak at the knees and I want him with everything that I have. And I want to do married people things with him. But daughters of Jerusalem, don't waken love until the right time. We've seen from the Shulamite earlier in chapter 1, she longed for purity. She still longs for Solomon. We've seen it over and over again. But she wants purity at the same time. So she's charging all the other girls, don't awaken or stir up love until the appropriate time. And the Shulamite understands, now's not the appropriate time. We're not married yet. And specifically, I think it's the idea of love making. Don't awaken love making until the appropriate time. And the appropriate time is marriage. And the Shulamite understood that. Now, romantic love brings about this desire, doesn't it? And there's nothing wrong with the desire. It comes from God, as long as it doesn't turn to lust or if it's awakened before the appropriate time. And so the Shulamite understands this, and she's such a good example for us of her desire for her man and her desire to be pure. Purer in heart, oh God, help me to be. That's something we can all be singing all the time. But wow, how amazing this is for the Shulamite here. Okay, this brings us to our last warning about godly courting or godly dating this morning, and that is beware of those who cannot wait. Beware of those who cannot wait. There's nothing wrong with sexual attraction as long as it doesn't turn to lust and when it's awakened at the appropriate and right times. The Shulamite woman realized it's right for me to wait until marriage. That's what's right, and she warns the daughters of Jerusalem the same thing. And if you can't suppress those feelings before marriage, it can end in a lot of trouble in life. And specifically, here they are, they've clearly gotten much more comfortable with each other. Who knows how long they've been interested in sort of courting or dating. But today, we definitely see people who have been in romantic relationships for a couple years, or maybe they even get engaged. They say, well, we're going to get married anyway, so no harm, no foul, right? Well, the wisdom of Song of Songs, the Shulamite specifically says it's not right to awaken or stir up love until the appropriate time. And the appropriate time is when we are married. Now, with that, I also want to take a moment and address an elephant in the room that always comes up, I believe, when we're talking about this subject, is we are extremely influenced by the culture around us. And our culture is an extremely hypersexual culture. And there may be several, maybe many of us in the room who either we did not wait till marriage or we haven't waited until marriage. One of the things that has to be said about that is that that is sin. That is sin, and we cannot skirt around it. That is sin. And at the same time, God's grace and mercy is more than enough to cover any and every sin that all of us in the room have committed times 20. And so what we need to say with that is, if we're in that situation, we need to heed the instruction of John 8:11, where Jesus is talking to the woman who was caught in adultery, and he says, go and sin no more. Go and sin no more. Don't do it again. Go and sin no more. So multiple things can be true at the same time. We can have failed to keep ourselves pure before marriage, and we can be forgiven by the Lord, and we need to go and sin no more. All of those things are true at the same time. And so if that's you this morning and you're in that situation and you're looking for godly courting, for godly dating, go and sin no more. And beware of those who can't wait, even if that's yourself. Beware of those who can't wait. Okay, that's where we're going to stop in Song of Songs this morning. It's a wonderful, wonderful book, and I hope that it's helpful and ultimately glorifying to God. But as we get to the close of this lesson this morning, by way of analogy, I want to connect this to Jesus. By way of analogy, connect it to Jesus. In romantic relationships, we would be wise to beware of secretive or non-committal relationships and how people identify with you. If they won't identify with you and they want to keep your relationship secret or non-committal, that's a red flag, isn't it? We would be wise to say that's a red flag in this person. So in our relationships with Jesus, is your relationship with Jesus secretive or non-committal? When you're around certain people, are you all about Jesus? I mean, it's really easy here, isn't it? Because we're all about Jesus. But then maybe you go around other people, and if you said that you were a follower of Jesus, they'd be like, what? Really? Is your relationship with the Lord secretive or non-committal? We would be wise not to tolerate that in romantic relationships, but do we expect Jesus to tolerate that from us? If we do, that's a red flag about us. And Jesus says in Matthew 10, 32 and 34, he says, everyone who confesses me before men, I will confess him before my Father who's in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I will also deny him before my Father who's in heaven. So if you identify with the Lord, that's all the time. And it doesn't change depending on who you're with. It doesn't suppress itself sometimes and come out at other times. It's all the time. It's not secretive, and it's not non-committal. In romantic relationships, we need to beware of those who diminish us or degrade us by their words or by the way that they treat us and make us feel more insecure. Well, many people think that that's the way God is, that he's trying to make us feel awful all the time and make us feel insecure and constantly degrading us. But Jesus says in John 6 and verse 63, he says, it's the Spirit who gives life, the flesh profits nothing. The words I have spoken to you are spirit and are life. Jesus is offering to us eternal life by his words. Those are some uplifting words, are they not? Those are some uplifting words. And speaking of uplifting words, Paul says in Romans 8, love these verses. Let's just read Romans 8, 38, 39. I'm convinced neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor any created thing will be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. That is safety, that is security. If you want to use Song of Song language, he is our shade tree that protects us from the sun and all of our insecurities. If you identify with the Lord, he lifts you up. He's your shade tree, he's your oasis, he gives life, and he never diminishes you. He never degrades you. He values you so much that he gave his life for you. He will never diminish you. And then, last one here, in romantic relationships, we would be wise to beware those who can't wait. And in our relationship with God, our relationship with Jesus, we can be confident. We can have full assurance that even if we haven't kept ourselves pure physically, his mercy is more. It's way more. And we need to heed John 8:11, what he said to the woman caught in adultery. Go and sin no more. Don't allow sin to remain in your body. His grace is not a license to sin more, but it's the very reason why we strive to sin less. Man. Okay. If you want to study the scriptures to learn about Jesus and know how you need to pursue him and let him lift you up with his words of eternal life, we would just love to do that with you. Believe me, there's a bunch of people in here who'd love to do that with you. If you know that he's Lord and you need to give your life to him and fully commit, not secretively, not in a halfway, but fully commit to him, we've got water. We would love to assist you with that. Or if you've been unfaithful to him and you need to come back or you need to make anything right, there's an opportunity now while together we stand and sing.